of valeriana. Then we have the constitution valeriana. Then we have the constitutional picture of valeriana. Then we have the homeopathic remedy valeriana. This is a plant. This is a sum of symptoms. This is an artificial illness. This is a negative etheric disordering energy. This is a sum of a picture, a sum of symptoms and characteristics of the influence of this to the man, to the human being. And this is a positive etheric energy, a homeopathic remedy. If every proving picture was a homeopathic remedy, then we would have so many homeopathic remedies as so many are the plants and minerals in this world. So we have an infinite number of homeopathic remedies. And nowadays, but it's not true. Nowadays, after conducting many provings without the correct way and the presuppositions that should exist, some say that we have 5,000 homeopathic remedies. In the repertory of Kent, we have about 800 homeopathic remedies. In his materia medica, we have about 250 homeopathic remedies. How many are the homeopathic remedies? Are we justified to say that every proving picture corresponds to a homeopathic remedy? If this was true, then we should have so many constitutions as the proving pictures. Is this true? For each and every proving picture that we have, does it correspond to a constitutional and a constitutional picture? Are there so many constitutions in nature, naturally existing as the proving pictures, as the plants and minerals that exist in this world? No. Why? It would be a tremendous thing, a shocking thing, if what I say is true. Because then, if it was true, then in our materia medicas, we have only very few truly existing homeopathic remedies. And if this is true, then there is a great confusion, because we tend to use homeopathic remedies that don't correspond, that don't have full similarity, complete similarity with the clinical picture of the patients. How am I going to support what I have just said? That not all proving pictures correspond to, what are proving pictures? Artificial illness. Not all artificial illnesses correspond to naturally existing illnesses. And if they don't correspond to naturally existing illnesses, then they are not homeopathic remedies. In order to be a homeopathic remedy, a similar remedy, you have to have a similar natural illness to act on, to act upon it. Okay, if the remedy you are giving, although called homeopathic, does not correspond, is not fully similar to the naturally existing clinical constitutional picture, then you don't have an action according to the law of similarity, to the law of similars. Let me go on with this. If we examine, I have told you that I believe that my method is true just because the classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy, because it follows the universal laws. What I have just said and claimed that not all proving pictures are homeopathic remedies correspond to naturally existing illness, is it true or not? Does it? It will be true if it corresponds, if it applies to universal and homeopathic laws. So let me give you an example. We have about the periodic table of elements. You all know it from physics and chemistry. Consists of about 400 basic elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, ferrum, and so on. From these 400 basic elements consist all the naturally existing materials. Let me make it more clear. We have an infinite number of materials. Infinite number. Okay, these infinite materials can be narrowed down to chemical substances. We may have an infinite number of materials, but we have less, a smaller number of chemical materials. A smaller, almost infinite, not infinite. A smaller number of chemical materials. We have about millions. Here we have billions. Okay, billions, millions. Then we have these chemical substances come from the elements, periodic table of elements, who are only 40. They are 400. From billions we have millions, then we have 400 only. From these elements, if we take out the radioactive and unstable elements, who are about 200, then we have the stable elements. Stable elements that are only about 200. From these 200 stable elements, that the unstable elements are rare and are found only in laboratory conditions. Laboratory conditions. So we have here the unstable elements that exist only in laboratory conditions or in special conditions and not in abundance. Then we have the elements that are frequent, that are found in abundance. How many of them are frequent? About 30 to 50. And from these 30 to 50, we have about 10 or 20 we have about that are very frequent. About 20 that are very frequent. Oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and so on. So you see that when it comes to the material level of existence, to the material world, we have, although we have a very large diversity, when we come to the basic elements that from which this material world consists of, from billions, from an infinite number, we come about to 50 basic elements. Remember the Lego pieces. From a few decades of Lego pieces, we can create an infinite number of structures. Okay? From the combination of current running and current, electrical current not running, from two primary states and data, we have the computer system. From the about 20 parts, members, pieces of the alphabet, we have an infinite number of words, and we have the creation of languages. So in the material world that we live, we have a universal law that stands greatly. Is the law of transformation of quantity to quality. This law originates from the universal law of uniqueness and diversity. This law tells us that all this diversity that exists in the universe comes from the one and only one, like a pyramid. We have the one, you could say God, supreme being, nature, universe, and then as you go down to the lower levels of existence, to the lower worlds, from the world of uniqueness, we come to the diversity world or the binary world. And then as we go down, we have diversity. As we go up, we have uniqueness. So this law tells us that although there is an infinite quantity of materials in the material world, all these come from certain few specific basic things. Let's go to the energy. For example, in the atomic world, let's go on. In the energy world, we have many kind of energies. We have. Let me go on with this. Then this elements of the periodic table, all of them come from three basic subatomic particles: the electron, the proton, and the neutron. And these subatomic particles come from energy. Einstein proved that all this material, all the matter of the world comes from energy. And although we have many kinds of energy, we have electromagnetism, electric energy, magnetic energy, nuclear energy, heat and cold, and so on. All these kinds of different energies come from the one and primary energy, the etheric energy, the cosmic energy, call it as you like. Let me give you another example. If we have the electromagnetic spectrum, the spectrum of the electromagnetic energy, then although we have angstrom, measured in angstrom, although we have an infinite spectrum and places, spots on the spectrum, this quantity is transformed to quantity only in certain areas. We have this area, we have the X-rays, energy, radiation, we have the A radiation, the G radiation, we have the visible light spectrum, and so on. So, from an infinite number of quantity, only in some spots we have quality, we have different and distinctive forms. Let me give you another example. We have water. At the area of 0 degrees Celsius, before lower than the 0 degrees Celsius, we have ice. We have a solid thing. From 0 to 100, we have water. We have the liquid form of existence. And over 100 degrees Celsius, we have the gas state. We have steam. So, if in the material world this law of transformation of quantity to quality stands bold, and if it also stands bold on the etheric, on the lower energy level, let me give you again the example of man. We have the spiritual level, the psychological level, the level of soul, psyche. If we have the etheric level, if we have the lower energies level, and the material level, this is higher energy, the etheric energy, this is lower energies, heat, electromagnetism, and so on. So, we have already proved that this law of transformation of quantity to quality stands bold to the material world. It also stands bold for the lower energies. Does it stand bold to the etheric level? We know that it stands bold also for the psychological level. We have many kinds of psychological states, but all these states take forms of certain emotions, or of certain behavior, or of certain thoughts. We say, for emotions, I feel sadness, I feel joy, I feel calm, I feel anger, and so on. Does it stand for both for the etheric level? We know that it does. From acupuncture, we know that we have the etheric energy inside us. This etheric energy in homeopathy we call it vital force. In acupuncture we call it Qi or Qi. Wilhelm Reim called it orgone energy, and so on. It doesn't mean anything if we change the names. We have to do with the same thing. The etheric energy, vital force, is the one that is that governs the phenomena of health and illness. That's why we talk about it. So, if this energy, vital force, flows into the meridians, and the meridians of the human body are specific, and then specific will be the disorders. If we have a specific order, then we have specific disorders that that make diseases. So we have specific illnesses. In the same way that in allopathy we have certain pathogenetic material, biological paths, and the disorder of this, the disorder of the function of the human body creates certain illnesses, we say diabetes, colitis, and so on. In the same way, the disorder of the pathogenic paths, the energy pathogenic paths that exist in man are certain. So we have certain illnesses. Although one could say that the pathology, the physical and psychological pathology is infinite, yet it is not. We have certain specific energy pathogenic paths, and these certain specific energy pathogenic paths result to certain specific naturally existing illnesses, chronic or acute. So if we have certain natural illnesses, then we have certain naturally existing homeopathic remedies. We have certain constitutions on man, on a healthy man, on a healthy man act certain constitutions that originate from certain Mayans, 3 Mayans. From 3 Mayans originate certain constitutions, naturally existing negative etheric disorders, etheric beings. and they can cause certain natural illnesses. Certain natural illnesses. So, if we have only certain natural illnesses, then we have only certain specific homeopathic remedies. All those proving pictures that seem to be infinite, of infinite number, do not correspond, all of them, to certain natural illnesses. And if they don't correspond, then they don't correspond to homeopathic remedies. Because a homeopathic remedy needs to be homeo, needs to be similar to the natural illness. We say homeopathic remedy. Homeopathic. Homeo comes from the Greek word homeo. That means similar pathology, similar illness. So, if what you say is a homeopathic remedy, if it is not similar, you don't have similarity, and you cannot treat and cure. Let me go on with this and say the following example. If I give you a basketball, and and you take the basketball with your fellows and you play football. You have a basketball, but you play football. What do you play? You play football. It doesn't matter if you have a basketball. If you apply the laws of the game of football, then you play football. So, if you take from the pharmacy a homeopathic remedy, a remedy that was characterized as homeopathic remedy, and you don't apply it to the patient according to the law of homeopathy, the laws of similarity, then what you do is not homeopathic. It's not homeopathy. Even if you get it from the homeopathic pharmacy, because it's the laws of the game, the laws that you apply that make your action homeopathic or allopathic. So if you get a homeopathic remedy from the pharmacy, but the laws that you apply it are allopathic laws, that is, you give it for this certain disease or for this certain symptom, then you don't have full similarity, and what you do is not homeopathy. So, in classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy, we say that materia medicas should change their name. The past materia medicas. They should be called proving books, because not all entries are homeopathic remedies. They are proving pictures. So these books should be called proving books. Let's go back to Hahnemann. the first thing that was included in Materia Medicas was proving data. Later on, they start the Materia Medicas that include only proving data should be called provings Materia Medica, or better, proving books. Then we have clinical data, that is, data that have come from the clinical practice and not from provings. And these Materia Medicas could be called clinical Materia Medicas or books. Then Kent came, and in his Materia Medicas, in only a few entries, sulfur, natrum muriaticum, nux vomica, and some other, he combined the proving data and the clinical data and managed to gather all symptoms and data and build an image, a whole picture of the influence of a certain constitution to the human being. And he found the essence and the whole picture of certain constitutions. So he tells us for sulfur that sulfur is a dirty, ragged, false philosopher. This is the essence of sulfur, of the constitution sulfur, of the constitutional picture of the constitution sulfur. And this was a new thing, constitutional Materia Medicas. In his Materia Medica, from the 250 described entries, in about 5 to 10 cases, entries, he managed to give some constitutional descriptions of the entries of sulfur, of natrum muriaticum, of nux vomica, and so on. He tried to give the essence and the whole picture, not just lay down an infinite list of symptoms and signs. There are some Materia Medicas from Kent's time and so on that have miasmatic data. And these could be called miasmatic. Apart from all the others, they have also miasmatic data. And this could be called miasmatic Materia Medicas. And in the end, we have classical miasmatic constitutional Materia Medicas. We have in these classical miasmatic constitutional Materia Medicas, we have proving data, clinical data, constitutional data, and miasmatic data. Then we have what I call classical miasmatic constitutional materia medica. In my materia medica, the classical miasmatic constitutional materia medica, what we have is, for each entry, for each chronic constitution, we will say later on what is a chronic and what is an acute constitution. For example, for sulfur, we have the miasmatic composition of sulfur. Then we have the essence. We have the full picture. We have the full picture of sulfur that mainly has to do with the picture during the state of clinical health. And the state of illness, of acute illness. State of clinical health is the chronic illness. The full picture during the state of clinical health or the state of chronic illness. Then we have the psychological profile of the patient's sulfur during, again, the chronic illness. Then we have the general physical characteristics, again during the chronic illness. And then from that time on, we have the general physical symptoms during the acute illness. And then we have the non-specific symptoms. Here we have the acute illness, here we have the chronic illness. That is the state of clinical health. In classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy, we emphasize hierarchically a disorder to the miasmatic composition, to the full picture state of chronic clinical health, to the psychological profile, and to the general physical characteristics. And we also emphasize on non-verbal data. We'll talk about it later. We don't deal much with this because our effort is to prescribe for the condition for the state of clinical health. So we emphasize on the miasmatic characteristics and the psychological characteristics and the general physical characteristics. During chronic illness, we have to do with characteristics of the person. Here we have to do in the acute illness with symptoms. It's a different thing. Symptoms is something that the patient complains about during the state of acute illness. Characteristics are those that the experienced homeopathic doctor observes to the patient, to the healthy person. We observe the characteristics of a person while in the state of clinical health. The patient talks about his symptoms during the state of acute illness. So in classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy, we deal mostly with the person, not with the patient. Here we have a patient, here we have a person. There are so many things to say, so I will end this here, the part A, the first part of the introduction to the classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy. And in part B, we will talk more about classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy. But before I close this lesson, I will emphasize about to what we have already said in this part A. First of all, we started saying why are there so many schools in homeopathy? And we said that there are so many schools in homeopathy because any homeopathic doctor has his own miasmatic and constitutional influences, so he can grab from the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth, only a piece of it. And if the more he is closer to applying universal and homeopathic laws to his diagnostic and therapeutic practice, the closer he is to the truth. That's why we have many schools of homeopathy. The criterion is to apply homeopathic and universal laws in your theory and practice. Then we took things historically and we talked then we talked about discriminating between 5 different things: the plant valeriana,